All right, a little bit of housekeeping for everybody first. We will have some time for Q&A, but I ask when we do Q&A, you'll all notice you have microphones on the table in front of you. Please turn that on to ask your question. We are going to be recording this session and having it captioned, so that's why I'm asking for that. Please just speak a little slowly for the captioner, and we will have a really good web presentation later, thanks to all of you taking that care. Good afternoon. I'm Lucy Greco. Many of you may know me as the new Campus Web Accessibility Analyst. It's my second day on the job, everyone. I've previously worked for the Disabled Students Program and still have really close ties to them, so we're looking forward to a new era in web accessibility, and this is our kickoff event. Actually, it's not. This is our WebNet event. So first of all, I want to thank the WebNet Steering Committee. Are any of you here? Please raise your hands. Say aye so I can hear you. Aye. There we go. WebNet Steering Committee, thank you for making June for the past 6 years now the Web Access Month. And I'd like to also thank AppNet. Are the AppNet people here? Aye. Aye. Okay, Devin. Because AppNet has also adopted June as WebNet or Web Accessibility Month. And AppNet will be sponsoring a second event on June 28th. We've sent one message out, and I'll send a couple more reminders out about that, for the new campus license to a web accessibility testing tool and learning platform. So please keep your eyes on that. It's going to be a streamed event, so you'll be able to do it from your desk. And it'll also be archived for you to watch later. It's going to be really valuable to any of you who are coders in the room to use this tool. And mostly, the reason we chose this particular tool is that it has really good learning modules. And the name of the tool is AMP, Accessibility Management Platform. And I'm really excited that UCOP has committed to buying the entire UC system a license to this software, so that everyone on each of the campuses has the ability to create more accessible content, but more importantly has access to the learning tools that have been prepared in this and the code samples and all the good tools. But now to speak to our today's speaker, who actually works for SFB BART but is not here on their behalf. He's here on a project he's created on his own. I believe we've sent out links to it in the announcement. But I've seen Bryan's work, and I was really excited to see that when I looked at one of his signature files that he was a local, because his work is one of the examples of how really good dynamic content can also be accessible. He's done some things that I've rarely seen done with accessibility, and I've been really impressed with how accessible the code samples he's provided are. These are samples that you can take and make it look whatever way you want, but still have your code be dynamic and accessible at the same time. I have to say his drag and drop was the first drag and drop I've ever been able to accomplish on a website. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Bryan. And remember, we'll have time for questions later. Bryan, would you like people to hold or to speak out if they have questions throughout, or hold their questions to the end?
Probably until the end, because then I can kind of go through the various samples that I have.
Excellent. So if you could hold your questions to the end, and then we will we'll address questions that way. Devin will give us a hand with that, I hope, and make sure that everybody gets a chance to ask. Without further ado, Bryan.
Yes.
And actually, let me give one or two.
Right.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we wanted to take a quick show of hands on what kind of audiences we have here today. So we're presuming that there's web application developers here today. So if you're a web application developer, raise your hand and I'll give a quick count. Looks like 5, 6, 7, 8. How about web designer? Looks like slightly fewer, like 6. What other kinds of audiences do we have here today, if I didn't name you?
Programming, application development, necessarily.
So non-web programmer. Any other sorts of job titles people want to disclose? All right. so it looks like we've got a fairly even split. And Bryan provided us with a stack of a pre-release version.
Yeah, of the API that powers all of the things I'll be showing today. It's basically a copy of all of the same materials that I'm going to be going through.
Great.
So they can be used as, essentially component templates that will, they can be used to make it, well, I'll go into it in more detail, but they're templates.
Great. And I'll just pass that out now as you're getting started.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Cool.
Sign-up sheet.
Yes, and I'll be passing around a sign-up sheet as soon as I figure out what Lucy wants on it.
I'd like email address and contact information, and if you would or would not like to be part of the listserv, if you already are not.
All set? Okay. So basically, my name is Bryan. I'm the creator of whatsock.com. As a bit of background, I've been blind since 1994 and I've been studying web development since the early 2000s. Brian,
I think this mic may be a little bit too quiet for us.
So
can you use the handheld mic?
yeah, that's fine. Is that over here?
And here is that.
Okay. If I put that down when I'm typing, is that going to be a problem?
So let me I'll put this thing on it so you can set it directly on that.
Like that. So can you guys hear me okay?
It's still a little bit quiet.
That was really.
Close the door.
I'll speak up, so if that helps. Okay, how about now?
I'm just worried about the recording. No, it's still not. We can hear you. I'm just worried about the recording.
So,
The room's fixed, so I think the boom probably picks up whatever sound there is. I'll go touch bases with the media.
Okay. Well, let's get started anyways. Sorry, Bryan.
okay. Is it okay if I leave this here like that?
You're going through now. I can hear you through the mic and speakers now.
Okay.
Yep.
So, where was I? Yeah, so I've been studying web development since the early 2000s, and during that time, it became obvious to me that there are an infinite number of ways to render content inaccessibly, but there are also a finite number of ways to render content accessibly. So to solve this problem, I built an API called ActDC, and ActDC is a rendering engine which acts as a conduit for the accessible rendering of dynamic content. So this also makes it possible for developers to build and distribute fully functional and fully accessible encapsulated dynamic content user interface components that can be incorporated into various web technologies. The first page that I'll be showing you today is actually contains a series of components, common control types, that could be used in this manner as basically to demonstrate the concept of encapsulated user interface components. So let me open this up.
Mozilla Firefox, start menu to navigate, press up or down. A. Software Manager S. Windows M, Mozilla Firefox. A. C. Cisco Any Connect VPN Client. C. Title is start menu, Cisco Any Connect VPN Client.
Bryan, can you
Windows M.
slow down a bit, please?
Yeah, I'm just trying
I
to.
don't have them that well trained.
Title is start menu, Cisco.
Yeah, not a problem.
Leaving. Taskbar Google, System Trade, Mozilla Firefox. A. Desktop, A. Alarm 95, A. ActDC API.
So,
ActDC.
open this up.
Folder view
And,
list view. Folder view list view. ActDC.html.
You know, the mics are picking you up
New
just
tab page. Google.
okay, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you.
Overview start edit 2, 1%. Ready. 100%. Page has 2 landmarks. Overview. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content. Update start heading level 2. ActDC dash excel blank. Heading left link. ActDC link close. List.
So, let's see.
Virtual find. JAWS find STAND. List. ActDC is opposed. Standard DOM elements in the tab of menu items period. Link view the ARIA tab of menu demo comma. Bullet the CSS drag and drop module. Bullet the ARIA sortable list box module. Link view the standard dynamic control templates demo or. Link view the standard dynamic and reader. View the standard dynamic control template. New tab page. Slower, slower, slower. Standard dynamic control templates tab group 1. Page has 7 headings and 6 lists. Standard. Menu. System menu. Restore unavailable to navigate. X. Leaving menus. Standard.
Okay, can you guys see that okay? The page. Okay, so this page basically contains about 4 different control types that appear pretty regularly on the web. We have a lightbox, a banner, extended tooltip, and a pop-up. So basically, what these control types do is shows how each of these control types can be rendered accessibly in a consistent manner across various web technologies.
Open the accessible lightbox demo button. Log and start edit 2.
So what's happening in this case is when the lightbox opens, focus is being set to a hidden heading element within the markup itself. The importance of setting focus to the beginning of the lightbox is that if you have any license material or important informational text that appears before the actual form fields themselves, then a screen reader user like myself can arrow down from this point on and read any content within that area. This is also important if there are active elements like links leading to, say, a privacy policy or related material that needs to be encountered before the form field. So then you can tab.
Forms mode on. Username colon edit. Type in text period. Password colon password edit. Forms mode off. OK button. Cancel button. Forms mode on.
Now this doesn't actually use ARIA. If you're familiar with ARIA or not familiar, ARIA is basically it's a plugin, a browser plugin that integrates with browsers and assistive technologies so that you can get better screen reader support and feedback for assistive technology users. This is important. This will definitely come into play later on in the other samples. In this case, there is very little ARIA usage. This is basically straight HTML. When the lightbox opens, it's appending the content at the bottom of the page and setting focus appropriately. There really isn't a whole lot that needs to be done to make something like this accessible. It's basically a matter of rendering the content in an intuitive location, setting focus appropriately, and then properly labeling the form fields and other elements within that area.
Forms mode off. Password colon. Forms mode on. Password edit. Forms mode off. OK button. Cancel button.
And when you close something like this,
List. Or by dynamically change list end. Reopen the accessible banner button.
the focus should be set.
Open the accessible lightbox demo button.
Yeah, the video driver is kind of messing things up. But when the dialog opens, actually when it closes, focus should always be set back to the triggering element. So in this case, this would be the button that actually opens the
accessible lightbox.
The button itself. So this is basically a lightbox demo. The way that all of these control types are set up is as encapsulated objects. So you could essentially take this demo is in the form of an object literal. So you can copy and paste it into any application using JavaScript. Switch out the content that's being displayed for different HTML markup, and change the CSS to make it appear however you want, and it will still be fully accessible in any web technology. And this is true for all of the demos on this site. So, for example, the banner.
Standard blank. Heading level 2 banner start. This is the best banner I ever seen. Link close.
So here there's actually a hidden close link attached to the banner. You can't see it visually because the way it's programmed is you can mouse in and out of the banner itself to close it.
Banner link close.
But by adding a hidden close link, it makes it keyboard accessible and accessible to assistive technology users as well. The important thing to keep in mind with accessibility in general is that anything that you build has to be keyboard accessible. So if you have a component and you can't tab to it, you can't press enter on it to activate it or use the arrow keys to cause what you want to happen, then technically speaking it's not actually accessible. So the important thing to keep in mind is that whenever you're building a new component, you always have to make sure that it is accessible from the keyboard with and without a screen reader active. And there are differences in that, and I'll get into that shortly.
Reader and keyboard only users period. Module files colon.
So we'll reopen the banner.
Open the accessible lightbox. Reopen the accessible banner button. This is the best banner I apostrophe V ever seen. Exclaim. Yay, exclaim, exclaim, exclaim.
So what it's doing is basically the component itself is programmed to automatically announce the content when it appears. This does use ARIA. Essentially, it uses a hidden span tag with role equals status and ARIA-live equals assertive. And the benefit of this is the content, no matter where it appears in the page itself, will be announced. So if you append or prepend a component to the top of the page, even though it appears in advance in the reading order, it will still be announced to an assistive technology user that supports the use of ARIA.
Reopen the accessible banner button. What is the greatest secret known to man? Question. Link graphic. Quote, it is a mistake to think you can solve any major problems just with potatoes, period. Quote, comma, Douglas Adams.
So this is an example of an extended tooltip, and it basically allows you to create tooltips that also contain active elements. And they may or may not contain them. It's entirely up to the developer. But it does support the use of active elements so that you can
Douglas Adams link. Enter
into a tooltip and activate it, which is useful if you have context-sensitive help information that leads to other locations. If you mouse in and out of this element, it will disappear. But for keyboard accessibility, there is a hidden close link that appears when you press tab to it, and you can activate that
What is the greatest secret?
to set focus back to the triggering element. The importance of that, obviously, is to maintain keyboard accessibility all the way across the board.
Show me the Shakespeare quote of the day. Exclaim. Link.
Now this is an example of a pop-up, which is a slightly different concept. And in this case, when it appears, it is inserted directly after the triggering element, which is important because when it appears, then you can arrow down.
Blank. Heading level 2 excerpt start. Hamlet colon act 3 comma C2. Link graphic close pop-up. Lock quote.
And enter in that content in the same manner as you would navigate to any component on the page.
Close pop-up link graphic.
And when you close it,
Show me the Shakespeare quote of the day.
it sets focus back to the triggering element. So what this does is it allows mouse users to interact with such components in the manner that you would expect, but it also
0 PM.
ensures keyboard accessibility for assistive technology users as well. And all of this works without a screen reader as well, and that's very important. So I'm going to move on to something that's a bit more complex that has to do with ARIA support. I'll show you in a sec.
Control W. Act DC dash. Download the carousel from XML mod. Virtual find. FOOT. Download the carousel from XML link. View the ARIA footnote generator module demo comma. View the ARIA footnote generator module demo link. New tab page. ARIA footnote generator module tab group 2. View ARIA. Change hotkey assignment to a new keystroke button. Atlantis underline footnote 1 link.
So in this case, this demonstrates how ARIA could be used to assign certain behavior for assistive technology users that may not actually cross over for keyboard users. Even though JAWS said this is a link, it's not actually a link. It's a span tag with role equals link on it. The importance of that is, or actually let me back up. The important thing to recall or remember about ARIA is that it does not actually change functionality, it changes behavior. So even if you put role equals link on a span tag or role equals button on a div tag, for example, it is not going to automatically convert that element into a button. It will appear as a button for an assistive technology user, but if you're a keyboard user, it's still going to be a span tag that does not receive keyboard focus and cannot be activated from the keyboard. So if you are going to use ARIA, the first thing to do is to program keyboard accessibility into it before adding the ARIA. And so for example, one way that assistive technologies compensate is that if you include role equals button on an element, or actually role equals link in this case, I can arrow to this link and press enter on it, even though there's a click event handler on it. And that would be all I would need to make sure that you could activate it from the keyboard. But if you have a click event handler on the span tag, that's not actually enough to make it keyboard accessible for a person who's not using an assistive technology. So you would have to put a key press handler on there and program it to accept the enter key as well. So that's the important thing to keep in mind, is that when using ARIA, you also have to program for accessibility with or without the use of assistive technologies. And in this case, it simply demonstrates the use of accessible footnotes.
Some say that the Azores are the legendary Atlantis underline footnote 1 link.
Where you can press enter on it,
Single dagger left bracket underline footnote 1 right bracket.
let's focus on it, press enter on it again,
Atlantis underline footnote 1 link.
and sets focus back. You can see similar functionality actually to this on Wikipedia as well. So then I'll back up.
Control W, Act DC.
Now I'm going to show you a simple way that ARIA can be used to make something complex accessible.
Download the ARIA, view the ARIA sortable. Download the auto suggest, view the auto suggestion search field, virtual find. JAWS CAAT. View the autos link, bullet the accessible chat, view the accessible chat, new tab page. Accessible chat dialog module tab accessible. Please type your full name as you would like it. Forms mode on. B R Y A N. Forms mode off. Loading comma. Please wait. Bryan, here we are now. Comma. Entertain us.
So this is a chat dialogue. It's basically styled after the old Facebook chat dialogue, and it's a regular, HTML and CSS for styling. There is no magic to it. The only thing that's used here is ARIA for announcing when new messages arrive, and this is important because it turns what would be an inaccessible component into one that is accessible for assistive technology users.
Message to forms mode on. Edit.
So
WELSOMETOTADE.
So when I press enter, anyone who has this dialog open anywhere will see this message arrive, and anyone using an assistive technology that supports the use of ARIA will hear the following.
Bryan, welcome to the machine.
So in this way, a person who is blind can be chatting back and forth with other people who are not blind, and it simply reinforces the whole aspect of accessibility and accessibility support. And it really does not require much to actually make this happen.
Lang. Forms mode off. Virtual link close. Start chat button. Accessible chat dialog.
So close this.
Control W. Act DC dash accelerate. Virtual find. JAWS MENU. View the accessible chat dialog module. Bullet the ARIA tabs and menu module. View the ARIA tab and menu demo. New tab page.
Now we're going to get into some more complex ARIA controls.
Accessible ARIA demos tab group 4. Page has 3 accessible.
And here we have essentially ARIA tabs and a menu control. The interesting thing about this is,
Dialogues.
well, first I'll show you the functionality. So for tab control, the expected behavior is that when you tab into something like this, you can press enter on it
Forms mode on. Dialogues tab.
and use the arrow keys essentially to switch between tabs.
Morphing tab. Interactive tab.
And by doing so, you can choose the tab you want and then press
Forms mode off. Live chat.
tab to enter the element or elements within that tab.
Heading level link graphic live chat colon an interactive chat dialog rendered as an automatically fixed act DC object comma including 2 options button menu options.
The concept is very simpler. The concept is simple. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you have a different functionality, such as tabs that open up different web pages, the concept breaks down slightly if you try to use ARIA in that case. Because what happens is when you press enter on it, it will open forms mode or enter forms mode, but then it will navigate to a new page, and that can be confusing sometimes. In this case, we have a
Options button menu.
menu control. And the way this is set up is there's only standard HTML on the back end. The script itself actually configures all of the ARIA markup to ensure accessibility and also all of the keyboard handling events. So I'll show you this.
Forms mode on. Menu. Submenu. To move through items, press up or down arrow period. Submenu. Submenu.
Yeah, it's not announcing. So basically what's happening is the video driver is preventing the
Submenu.
announcement of the label of the element. But when it's not plugged into a monitor, it will actually announce the link name as you're seeing it and the submenu content.
Submenu. 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 Name.
That's a JAWS bug, everybody.
Yeah, this isn't a scripting bug. But when you want to build out menus, accessible menus, what you can do is essentially create list items on the back end, and it will automatically populate and add the necessary ARIA markup to make menus such as these accessible for assistive technology users. So it makes life easier for developers and for people using them as well, since there's consistent handling of events all the way across the board. And you press escape.
Leaving menus. Accessible ARIA demos dash Windows Internet Explorer. Forms mode off. Options button menu. Options.
And when it closes, focus gets set back to the triggering element.
Control W. Act DC dash.
So now I'm going to take you actually to a more complex control type, and I'm going to show you, it's on an external site, and I'll show you what is not actually working properly.
Act DC API. Act DC dash accelerated. Act DC API. Act Alt Control I menu. Connecting dot dot dot. Leaving menus. New tab page. Windows Internet Explorer.
Open up.
7%. Search edit. Forms mode on. Secure connection. Search edit. Type in text period. Menu. System menu. Restore unavailable. X. Leaving menus. Google dash Windows Internet. Alt menu bar. Demo sub menu. 1 dash vacation package guide Walt Disney World. Leaving menus. Google dash Windows Internet Explorer. Forms mode on. Secure connection. Search edit. Type in text period. 100%. Forms mode off. Vacation package guide vertical bar Walt Disney World Resort. Vacation.
So here we're on the Walt Disney World website. Here they make use of various control types on this one page. I'm not going to go into the various standard accessibility issues that occur on each of these pages, just the interactive aspect of accessibility.
Go button. Two adults button. Label 6 button. June 15th, 2012 button.
What I want to do here is to change the date
June 15th,
from June 15th to another.
button. June 15th button.
So when I open this up,
Virtual PC cursor.
it doesn't appear
Button.
anything happen.
Link 25. Link 26. Link 24. Link 23.
Yeah, so it's showing a calendar basically embedded within the page. It's within a table, which is not a bad thing.
F link 22. S link 23. Column 7. Link 16. 9 2. Row 2. S row 1. Top of column S.
So I want to go to July 4th.
F T W T M S. Table with blank. June 2012. Link next.
So I'm trying to switch to July.
July 2012. Blank. Table with 7 columns and 6 rows. S M. Link 2. Row 2. T. Link 3. W. Link 4. Column 4.
So here's the 4th. I'm going to press enter,
4 link. PC cursor.
and something happened where now focus is lost and I can't get back.
PC cursor.
So I'm trying to use the arrow keys to navigate. It's not working.
PC cursor.
PC cursor isn't working. So I'll have to switch out
Act DC API. Act DC API. Full vacation package guide vertical bar Walt Disney World Resort.
and go back in.
Link 3.
So now I'm back on the page and the calendar is still open,
Link 4.
but it's not saving the option.
Link 3. Link 4. 4 link.
Try that again.
PC cursor.
It traps focus. So basically it does not allow you to actually activate a date to change this value. So now I'm going to...
Menu bar. Menu. System menu. Restore. Dynamic. Move available. M. Restore R. Title is Vacation Package Guide Vertical Bar Walt Disney. Leaving menus. Act DC API. Act DC API. Vacation Package Guide Vertical Bar Act DC Act DC API. Folder view list view. Act DC.htm13k. PC cursor. Vacation Act DC API. Folder view list. PC cursor.
Trying to set focus back into...
Details outline button collapsed. PC cursor. Folder view list view. Act DC.htm13k. BHT. Vacation Package Guide Vertical Bar Walt Disney. Act DC accelerated dynamic.
So the problem is that when it traps keyboard focus, it makes it very difficult to actually set focus back within the browser.
Virtual PC cursor. Title is Act DC accelerated dynamic.
So now I'm going to...
CAL. View the ARIA tab with menu demo visited link. Reader and bullet the ARIA 3 from XML module pulls values from an external bullet the ARIA 3 from XML module bullet the ARIA 3 from XML bullet the CSS drag and drop module automatically works scan bullet the CSS drag and drop bullet the auto suggestion search field module is a Google dash style view. Virtual line CALEND. Bullet the ARIA calendar module uses an encapsulated function that view the ARIA calendar module demo link. New tab page.
So now I'll show you one that actually does work.
ARIA calendar module tab group 5 list. Menu system menu restore to navigate text. PC cursor. PC cursor. Leaving menus vacation package guide vertical ARIA calendar module virtual PC cursor.
Okay, is that maximized? Can you see that okay? Okay.
Rabbit the top. Set your birthday goal.
So
Set your forms mode on. Set your birthday goal edit. Type in forms mode off calendar left.
I'm going to set my birthday.
12, Tuesday June 2012 link. 12, Thursday July 2012 link. 12, Wednesday September 2012 link. 12, Friday October 2012 link. 12, Monday November 2012 link. 11, Sunday November 2012 link. 18, Sunday November 2012. 25, Sunday November 2012 link. Caliper, left parent basic with standard selection, right parent link.
Now, I'm going to just do this, and then I'll explain how it's actually working in the back end.
Set date of party colon. Forms mode on. Set date of party colon edit. Type in text period.
Party.
Forms mode off. Caliper, left parent advanced with editable comments, right parent. 12, Tuesday, June 2012 link. 12, Friday, October 2012 link. 12, Monday, November 2012 link. 19, Monday, November 2012 link. 26, Monday, November 2012 link. 30, Friday, November 2012 link. 23, Friday, November 24, Saturday, November 2012 link. Comment for 24, Saturday, November 2012 edit. Type in text period. T R E T E N D T O E E S U R P R I S E D. Has comment 24, Saturday, November 2012. Pretend to be surprised link. Type in text period. ARIA calendar module heading level 1.
So basically, the way this works is that it uses a combination of table markup and ARIA to ensure accessibility. And all of this is handled on the back end automatically. So when the widget appears, it's actually linked to a triggering element, and then it renders the calendar table as you see it, and then as the ARIA markup afterward. And what happens in this case is it's surrounded by roll equals dialog, and that's what's allowing me to use various navigation commands like the arrow keys, the page up and page down commands to switch between months. I could also press Alt page up and Alt page down to navigate by year as well. So it simply shows you how an accessible component can be made fully accessible, and it's also fully mouse accessible as well. You can simply click on it, hover the mouse over the one you want, click it, and it will cause the same behavior to occur. This is also fully accessible from the keyboard without an assistive technology as well. So it basically covers all of the bases in this case. So I'll show you another one.
Control W, Act easy dash accelerated. Vacation package guide vertical bar Walt Disney World. Ramming the top, go button. 2 adults button, label 6 button, June 15th, 2012 button. Unlabeled 6 button. $1,500 button.
So in this one, I'm going to show you the example of why a slider is important, or it's important to make a slider accessible.
Button. $1,500 button.
So here I want to change the monetary value.
Button. Link http://guide.disneyworld.disney.gov.com/land/vacation-package-guide/number.
So here they're actually trying to use ARIA, but they're surrounding this dialog. They're using roll equals dialog to enforce
12:45 p.m.
the keyboard aspect.
Easy cursor.
But it is not actually working because they didn't put any ARIA markup or ARIA attributes within the slider itself. So even though I'm using the arrow keys and page up, page down, home, end, none of these things are actually being conveyed, so I can't tell what's happening. And they're also trapping the keyboard focus, so when I press tab or shift tab, nothing happens. So if I press escape,
List end. Bullet link log. Ramming the 2 adults button, label 6 June 15th, 20, unlabeled 6 button, $1,50.
$1,500 stays. So now let me go back.
Accelerated dynamic. Only use virtual find. SLIDER. Ramming the top. Manners, Disney Manners, tab. Manners, tab. Bullet the ARIA slider module on the map. View the ARIA slider. New tab page. ARIA slider module tab group 6. List page has 2 headings and 3 links. ARIA slider module.
So in this case,
Windows slider :0.
we have an accessible slider control. See, which does appear in the form field list as well, which I can access by pressing insert F5.
Select the form field dialog. List 1, list 2. Windows slider :0-100 current slider 0%. 1 of 1. To move the items used.
So here you can see a labeled slider, which is using ARIA to do this. Press enter on it.
Forms mode on. Windows slider :0-100 current. Forms mode on. Windows slider :0-100 current. Left right slider 0%. To increase or decrease, use the arrow keys. Period.
So now I can use the arrow keys, page up, page down, home, and end to change the slider control.
1%. 100%.
So I just held down the right arrow in order to open up the slider. But I can also
99%, 98%, 97%, 96%, 95%.
change the values, and it tells me which percentage is happening. So basically, it's controlling what's being announced through the ARIA attributes. I can also use page up and page down.
100%, 90%, 80%, 70%, 60%,
And it's programmed to go by increments of 10% for that, or home and end.
0%.
Um,
Mode off. Virtual PC cursor. Link open manual slider.
There's also a manual slider link here that appears automatically. And this will
Forms mode on. Windows slider combo box. 0 to change the selection. Use the arrow keys. Period.
essentially provide an alternative for assistive technologies that do not support the use of ARIA. And they can click this link, press this, enter the hidden select field,
29.
and change the values accordingly.
Forms mode off. For 99% Windows slider. Combo box 99. 1 of 101.
So it's a very simple way to activate a slider. And the way this is programmed is this is a standard DOM element. There's nothing special about it. It's just I believe it's a div or a span tag. The way that it works is the script takes that element and automatically configures all of the ARIA support. So you could essentially build out a number of sliders, fully accessible sliders, on any page in this manner without having to know how the ARIA markup is used or the ARIA attributes are applied in order to make this fully accessible.
Control W. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content tab group 6. View the
Now,
vacation package guide vertical. Alt menu 5. Demo sub 1 dash make 2 dash Google AdWords 2. Leaving menus.
I'm going to show you a more complex control type.
7%. Campaign management.
Which is on the Google AdWords site.
Windows Internet Explorer dialog. Stop running this script. Question. A script on this page is causing Internet Explorer to run slow. Yes button to activate. Press no button. Menu. Leaving menus. Virtual PC cursor. Campaign management.
All right.
Campaign management. Link graphic 7 DL break AFV 9. Campaign management. Home link. Campaign opportunities. Tools and analysis. Billing. My account. Search edit. Preview.
So here we have an ARIA tree control. Now these are notoriously hard to program, which is a bit of a pain, and I'll show you why it's important to actually make sure that these things work correctly. So I'll open up the forms list dialog.
Select the form field dialog. List 1, list 2, unlabeled 1, preview 8 of 37.
So you can see that there is a tree view or a tree control here. It's not labeled properly. I'll set focus to it,
Menu. Leaving menus. Forms mode on. Campaign management. To move through or expand items, use the arrow keys. Period.
and I'll try to use the arrow keys to navigate.
Space. Link shared library. Preview. Forms mode on.
So JAWS is not announcing anything that's actually happening, if anything is. So it's not working properly. So now I'll show you one that is.
Form ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content dash win virtual PC cursor virtual find TREE. View the ARIA slider module demo visited link. Bullet the ARIA calendar module uses an encapsulated file. Bullet the ARIA slider module automatic. Bullet the accessible chat dialog module. Link download the ARIA 3 from XML module demo files pure. Link view the reader and keyboard. View the ARIA 3 from XML. New tab page. ARIA 3 from XML module tab group 7. Page has 5. ARIA. Select the form field dialog. List 1, list 2. Choose region 3 view 1 of 1. To move the
Now here you can see a tree that has an ARIA label of choose region, and I'll set focus to it.
Forms mode on. Choose region 3 viewers closed 1 of 1. To move through or expand items, use the arrow keys. Period.
So
Level 1 Earth open 1 of 1. Level 2 Africa closed 1 of 7. America left parent north right parent closed. America left parent north right parent open 2. Level 3 United States closed 1 of 1. United States open. Level 4 California closed 1 of 3. California open. Level 5 San Francisco 1 of 2.
So here you can see that as I'm navigating the tree, it's announcing the label of the currently selected item, and it's selecting it at the same time. So all of the scripting handlers are being fired when that happens. The interesting thing is that this is all being controlled through an external XML file, and there is no ARIA markup within it. It simply takes the content of the XML file, parses the nested items within it, and automatically builds out the accessible tree in this manner. So you could essentially populate an XML file with fully accessible content and not have to worry about how to make something like this fully accessible, because it will happen automatically.
Forms mode off. Virtual PC cursor. Control W. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content tab group 7. Campaign management dash Windows Alt menu. Demos 1 dash make 2 dash 3 dash J 4 dash reordering the list 4 5 dash carousel using both images and text within it 4 dash reordering the list 4 3 dash J clear UI select menu and ARIA dash 2 dash Google AdWords 3 dash leaving menus. Campaign management dash Windows Internet Explorer 2%. 100%. jQuery UI select menu colon ARIA dash accessible plugin for styling a custom HTML select element vertical bar filament group comma period comma.
So here we have a jQuery widget that is programmed to build out an accessible list box control using ARIA. And what this is supposed to do is
Forms mode off. Virtual key. Select the speed button menu.
open up a dialog that you can use the arrow keys to choose the item that you want as an alternative for a styled select field.
Select the speed button menu. Select the speed forms mode on. Medium list view medium comma medium. Icon always show this message for web page errors alt plus Windows.
Except this one is not working properly.
Always show this message. Always show this message for web. Copy error details alt. Hide details alt. Close button. Menu. Forms mode off. Leaving forms mode off. Slow list box item. Ramming the top button menu. Select the speed colon. Blank. Select the speed colon button menu. Button menu. Select the speed colon. Blank. Heading level 2 default colon quote pop up quote style with max height set. Button menu. Select forms mode on. Medium list view medium comma medium.
So basically, the keyboard functionality for this control is not working properly. What should be happening is the following.
Virtual DC dash accelerated dynamic content dash virtual find JAWS find SUGG view the ARIA 3 from XM link bullet the auto suggestion search field view the auto suggestion search field new tab page auto suggestion search field module tab group 8 list page has auto search for country colon edit forms mode on search for country colon edit type in text period Uganda.
So basically, what this control does is it opens up a similar list box type control where you can press Alt down arrow or tab directly into it.
List box Uganda. List box Ukraine. List box United Arab Emirates. List box United Kingdom. List box United States.
And choose the item you want or press Alt up arrow or enter to select it.
Close list box. Search for country colon edit contains text type in text period. Edit United States.
So it should be that simple for using a simulated list box or ARIA list box control. This one automatically configures all of this in the back end as well.
Control W. Act DC dash accelerate. J clear UI select menu colon R. Alta menu favorites demo sub 1 dash make 2 dash group 3 dash J clear U 4 dash reorder in the list 4 3 dash J clear UI 4 dash reorder leaving menus J clear UI select menu colon ARIA dash accessible plugin for styling a custom HTML select element vertical bar field dash Windows Internet Explorer reordering.
So here we actually have somewhat of a more complex type of functionality, and this is a sortable list box control, and it should be possible to resort the list items within here.
List of 3 items. Heading level 3 list 1. Blank. Link drag and drop utility period.
And this is part of the YUI toolkit, I believe.
Blank. Heading level 3 list 1. List of 3 items. List 1 comma item 1. List 1 comma item 2. List 1 comma item 1. List 1 comma item 2. List 1 comma item 3. Heading level 3. List of 3 items. List 1 comma item 1.
So I can't set focus in this element.
Show current order button. Drag and drop utility link. Show current order button. List end. List 2 comma item. List 2 comma
So there is no way for me to sort any of these items from the keyboard. Now I'll show you one that works.
ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content dash Windows Internet Explorer new browser window. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content dash Windows Internet Explorer. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content. View the auto suggestion search field module demo visited link.
So,
User in virtual find. JAWS SORT. Bullet the ARIA sortable list box module dynamically. View the ARIA sortable list. New tab page. ARIA sortable list box module tab group 9. List page has 2 headings and 2 links. ARIA sortable list box module heading level 1. ARIA sortable list box module demo. The ARIA sortable list box module dynamically converts standard list markup into a keyboard accessible sortable list box control period.
so here we have a standard list.
List of 1 items. 1 period. Link setup.js add button. Clear button. Enable sort button. List of 9 items. 1 period. Reading a good book in a quiet place.
So this is a standard list. There's nothing special about it. It's simply
Exploring the culture and history of a new
an OL tag with LIs with content within. There's nothing special about it. No special markup.
Enable sort button.
One thing to know about ARIA in advance is that you cannot actually add ARIA roles to an element that's already existing within the page and have it work properly. You have to essentially re-render that object as a new one in order for the accessibility API within the browser to recognize it properly. So what's going to happen is when I press the sort button here,
Enable sort button.
it will take all of the content within that list, rewrite it, build it out using an ARIA list box control, and then re-render it in the same place. So then I can use the arrow keys to navigate and spacebar to move items back and forth around that area.
Clear button. Enable sort button. Forms mode on. Sort list view reading a good book in a quiet place. Dragable 1 of 9. Sort list view exploring the culture and history of a new country. Dragable 2 of 9.
So now I'm in the list box that just opened.
Dragable. Sort list view having cider in a warm London pub with friends on a cold rainy day. Dragable 3 of 9. Item grab period. Press up and down to arrow to another list item and press spacebar to move the item.
So I press the spacebar to grab it. I'll go to the top by pressing home.
Sort list view reading a good book in a quiet place. Droppable 1 of 9.
Spacebar to drop.
Sort list view having cider in a warm London pub with friends on a cold rainy day. Dragable 1 of 9. Move.
So now the the list box is resorted, actually.
Sort list museum and awesome concert. Item wrap period. Press up and down there. Sort list view having cider in a warm London pub with you. Sort list museum and awesome concert at the Brit Show Draco 2 of 9.
It's
Move.
very easy to move things around. And I think I even press, yeah, so when you want to end, you just press enter.
Arms mode off. Enable sort button.
It sets focus back to the sort button.
List of 9 item 1 period. Having cider in a warm London pub with friends on the...
And now the list has been reparsed and put back as a standard HTML element with the new items in the same place that they were before, except in this case it's fully sortable from the keyboard. And this also works without any assistive technology like a screen reader running at the same time as well.
Control W. ActDC dash accelerated dynamic. Reordering the list dash Windows Internet Explorer Alt menu 5. Demo 1 dash vacation. 3 4 dash reorder. 5 dash carousel using both images and text within an item 5. 4 dash reordering the list 4. 5 dash carousel. Leaving menus. Reordering the list dash Windows Internet Explorer. List 2 list 2 comma item 1 list 2 comma item 2 list 2 comma item 3 heading level 3. Carousel colon using both images and text within an item. Page has 21 heading carousel colon.
Now here we have a carousel.
Next page button. Grabbing the top. Next page button. Previous page button unavailable. List end. Previous page. Next page button.
Now the thing to keep in mind is that this carousel actually is accessible, but what they're doing is they are rendering all of the content in the page at the same time. So even though you're seeing only parts of it,
List of 12. Next page button. Previous page button unavailable. Next page button.
so I can set focus to the next page button. And now,
Previous page. Next page button unavailable.
visually it changes.
List of 12.
At
Next
least
page.
I assume it is, but there is no indication to me that something is actually happening.
Previous page button.
So, hold on, I'll bring up the headings. That's fine.
Heading list dialog. Headings list view using both. Headings list view. Reading the source road colon 4. 21 of 21. Headings list view. The dash.
All of these headings are different pages contained within each of the slides that you're seeing when I'm flipping around in the carousel. The importance is that they're all visible to me regardless. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which slide is currently focused or has focus. All of this content is within the page. The concept itself is fine. There's nothing inaccessible about it, but it starts to break down once you start expanding the number of slides to say 25 or 30 or 50 or beyond that. In that, once you have that much amount of content within the same page, it can be difficult to navigate using a screen reader because they would have to essentially wade through all of that content to get past controls such as these. And I'll show you
Previous page.
a different concept
00 PM.
that is also accessible.
ActDC dash accelerated dynamic content dash window. Virtual find. CAROUS. View the ARIA sortable list box module demo with linked up. Bullet the carousel from XML. View the carousel from XML. New tab page. Carousel from XML module tab group 10. View the carousel from XML module carousel. Graphic and Monitor dash love at the time of science.
So here we have different types of carousels.
Previous group alt plus 3 button. Graphic red dash labor of love. Previous group alt. Previous slide alt plus 1 button.
Now, this is being fully configured from an XML file on the back end. So all of the content that you see happening is basically automated. The accessibility aspect is being automated. So the way it's programmed is you can activate the various buttons.
Previous slide alt plus 1 button. Alt plus 1. Previous group alt plus 3 button. Alt plus 3. Next slide alt plus 2 button. Alt plus 2.
Using the access keys.
Next slide alt plus 2 button. L2. Classical. Hog.
So what's happening is, as I'm switching between the slides, you can actually hear the group name of the slide and the slide itself.
L2. Classical. Beethoven. L2. L2. Classical. Chopin.
And it does depend on ARIA, so
L2. Classical. Mozart.
on occasion it won't announce things as you would hope. But you can arrow up from here
Next slide alt plus 2 button. Graphic Mozart. Previous group alt plus 3 button. Graphic Mozart.
and see the slide that you want. Or press Alt 1
Previous slide alt plus 1 button. Alt plus 1. Classical. Chopin.
and control the various slides in this manner. There are
Classical. Heading level 3 press escape this.
there are various ways and options that you can set a carousel to appear. For instance, as a slideshow.
Previous slide alt plus 1 button. Previous group alt plus 3 button. Alt plus 3. Next slide alt plus 2 button. Alt plus 2. Graphic Chopin. Next slide alt plus. Next group alt plus 4. Carousel.xml link. Next group alt plus 4 button. Alt plus 4. Virtual PC cursor. Previous slide alt. Next slide alt plus generate fixed wizard from XML button. Next slide alt plus F button. Graphic the code.
Yeah, so
Alt F. Next slide alt plus F graphic. Love actually.
so here's just a different take on the slide without group names.
Alt F. Romeo and Juliet.
So in this way you can switch between slides, and the value in having it announced is that it appears when you click a button, it's obvious that something is actually happening. And this is often very important for an assistive technology user who may not be able to see content moving around on the page. One interesting thing about this technique is that instead of having all of the content appear within the page itself, by having things appear dynamically, you can also create advanced control types. For instance, you can create a wizard in the following manner.
Next slide, Alt plus F button. Generate fixed wizard from XML button. Step 1 of 4, like 2 camels have 3 eyelids, left parent 2 with lashes, right parent question, edit, type in text, period.
So here we have basically a form that appears when you press that button. The value, obviously, in having one slide appear at a time is that you don't have all of these form fields for a wizard appearing at the same time in the same page. So in this way you can control the appearance of content and control also user input as well.
Step 1 of 4, like 2 camels have 3 eyelids, space, edit. E space E Who covered the 1932 Olympic Games in Los Angeles as a reporter? Question. George Orwell radio button checked to change. Next step button to activate. All fields are required. Step 2 of 4 sketch plans for a humanoid robot in the 15th century. Question. Edit, type in text, period.
So in this manner, it dynamically loads each slide when that appears and clears up the document object model after each slide disappears. So you don't have that residual content within the page. So this is just another way that you can make carousel type controls fully accessible using a combination of ARIA and DOM manipulation.
Virtual PC cursor. Lang. Dynamic wizard is fully configured and populated using the XML file. Control W. Act DC dash accelerate. Carousel code using both images. Alt menu. Demo submenu. 1 dash 2 4 dash reordering the list. 4 5 dash carousel using both images and 6 dash basic drag and drop 6. Leaving menus. Carousel code using both images and text within an item dash Windows Internet Explorer. Basic drag and drop 100%. Page has one heading and one link. Basic.
And here we have the final component, which is drag and drop. This happens all over the place. It doesn't really matter if you're using drag and drop for something that is, purely visual. For instance, relocating a dialogue on the page or moving something somewhere else just to keep it out of the way. The important thing is when you want to use drag and drop for important things like selecting objects for, say, sorting lists or for selecting, say you have a job cart and you want to drag and drop the option that you want within a cart or a shopping cart. There are many ways that you can do that, but the standard ways that people use drag and drop are not accessible.
Link drag and drop utility period. This example demonstrates basic features of Lang. Heading level 1 basic drag and drop.
For example, on this page there is no keyboard accessibility for
Drag and drop utility link. Command bar toolbar. Drag and drop.
For drag and drop. Now there are ways of using ARIA, which I used on the sortable list box. The thing to keep in mind with making a component draggable is that, draggable from a keyboard, is that you don't actually want to always select the entire item. So say you want to drag one item that also contains another active element within it, it's not a good idea to nest active elements. The reason being that it completely messes up keyboard accessibility by doing that. I'll show you another option.
DC dash accelerated dynamic. Slideshow comp, virtual find, JAWS find, .drag, grabbing the top, banners, comma, tab, bullet the CSS drag and drop module automatic, view the CSS, new tab page. CSS drag and drop module tab, group 11, page has 5 at CSS, set drag and drop button.
So basically these are all just
Heading level 3 bookshelf, list of 12 items, graphic A short history of nearly everything by Bill Bryson.
standard images. There is no keyboard accessible component here.
Edit, C, /, set drag and drop button.
So now I'm going to
Set drag and drop button unavailable.
turn all of these into draggable components.
Lang. Heading level 3 book list of 12 items. Link drag A short history of your list of drag A short history of nearly everything by Bill Bryson link.
So what it does is it adds essentially an anchor link next to each of the draggable elements, which you can toggle on and off.
Drag here's invalids home from outline. Drag Romancer by William Gibson link.
And then you can jump to the section that you actually want to drop them.
Reading list alt +2 heading level 3. Drop A short history of nearly everything by Bill Bryson link. Reading list alt +2 drop the Romancer by William Gibson heading level 3.
And drop the items that you want to drag to that location.
Drop the Romancer by William Gibson link. Reading list alt +2 drag A short history of nearly everything by Bill Bryson heading level 3. Reading list alt +2. Heading level for list of 2 link drag A short history of nearly list of 2 drag A short history.
And in this way you can make drag and drop fully accessible. And these are also fully accessible using the mouse as well in the standard fashion that you would accept. You simply click on it, drag it to where you want, and drop it where you want the items to appear. So this is actually the last sample for me to show you guys, but all of these components that I've been showing you are powered by the ActDC API, the one that I was telling you about earlier. And one thing to keep in mind is that ActDC, because it's entirely constructed using JavaScript, you can also incorporate it into the web browser components of software applications as well. And one thing that's actually really interesting is that with the EPUB 3 standard for ebook publication, it also supports the use of JavaScript. So in the future with ebook publications, components such as these interactive components can also be made fully accessible for future ebook publications as well. So there are many different options for adding accessibility within software such as this, and it's actually very simple and easy to do. So hopefully that all makes sense, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So you just push on it and then talk. And the light should go on if you're holding it down. No, I can bring a mic over.
As technology moves towards more and more use of smartphones and other smaller devices that don't have keyboards in the traditional sense, how do you envision this sort of technology changing?
It crosses over well, actually. That's one of the reasons why the ARIA is very important, is that voiceover, such as on the iPhone and iPad applications, they're basically incorporating much more accessible support within these technologies. So as time goes on and ARIA support becomes more widely incorporated into these platforms, the components such as these will simply become more accessible as time goes on. So the important thing is that if they're programmed according to the specification on the ARIA, the W3C ARIA spec, then there's no reason why such components will not be fully accessible in the future as well on mobile platforms. And I have actually tested these on the iPhone, and they do work on the iPad as well. So it does have cross-platform compatibility as well built in.
Here's another.
Actually, I just wanted to play with a little button over here that doesn't work. Actually, I have a couple of questions, but I'll just keep it to one right now. For your applications that are your components, obviously are being driven with JavaScript, would you say that will all fall back? If I'm running a browser without JavaScript, how much failure will happen, and is that important? Because what we're starting to realize is almost all browsers, accessible and otherwise, have JavaScript as a standard feature. Most people aren't running non-JavaScript enabled browsers. So do these fall back all of them correctly, or is that something we should be addressing?
Do you mean, I'm having trouble hearing the full
If we disable JavaScript?
Oh, yes, I see. Yeah, they do require JavaScript. Unfortunately, for advanced control types such as these, they're really the only way that they can be constructed with full keyboard accessibility is to have JavaScript enabled. Luckily, as time goes on, it appears that only a very small subset of the population is using their browsers without JavaScript enabled. And that's basically the problem that you're going to come across, is that there really is no way to program advanced functionality within web applications without the use of JavaScript.
I'm glad you said that, because we're in the process of, for instance, building a sort of universal form validator. And although on the server end it has server-side code, the communication between the form page and the validator is with JavaScript and then JSON returning to identify any errors in the form entry by by the user. And with JavaScript turned off, it basically we can tell the user that they made an error, but that's about it. They have to reload the page. They have to re-enter all their data because we're not using a PHP page to generate the stuff in the first place. So that's sort of where I'm leaning. What you just said, so that makes me happy. I'll take that as a good answer.
Yeah, I think I believe you're safe. You don't have to worry. Yeah, in the future, there really is no complex support that could be dynamically generated, such as content or dynamic error handling that cannot be that is capable of being achieved without the use of JavaScript. So that's definitely going to be something that has to be enabled in the future for anyone wanting to use such controls. Yeah, and I don't think that has any problem with accessibility because assistive technologies are being built nowadays with full JavaScript support. So there's no reason why not to use it.
Another question. See, you guys, if you don't raise your hand, I've got this thing now. This one I also have my own answer for. I just wanted to hear your take, which is I notice all of your demo pages are XHTML, which, of course, you can't validate area with any of the validators using XHTML. And our take on it is, oh, well, shucks. The browsers deal with area fine. That's just one of those ignore what the validator says and get thou forward. Is that your take?
Yes, it is. I actually asked one of the guys from the W3C about that, and I was told the same thing. So just ignore it. Yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's what you just need, folks. All you need is an external authority that's not you to say it, and you're happy. So.
Yeah, the same is going to be true for HTML5 as well, unfortunately.
So what my take on that is, as somebody who's going to lead this initiative here, is that it's perfectly fine to ignore the validator if you have end-user proof. So be sure that you have somebody who can prove that it works and shows that it works. That if the validator is calling you out, you have some way to call back to it and say, but we tested this with a screen reader, we tested this with a Dragon user, and we tested this with a keyboard-only user. Because that's really what counts in the end to us, always, is that a user can use it. I mean, the code can be completely valid and not work. The code can be completely invalid and it works for everyone.
Yeah, the trick, the reason why I use XHTML is that it enforces strict markup requirements. So it's always important to, for example, to have opening and closing tags for various element types, because once you start getting into sloppy coding, then you're going to have scripting errors in the future by doing that. So it's always good just to be as careful as possible when building out the structure of your HTML documents.
Hi, I'm a developer at UCSF, and we are doing currently a lot of Drupal development. For people who don't know what Drupal is, it's an open source content management system. It seems to be getting a lot of traction at UCSF. I think there's a lot of that being done here at Berkeley too. And Drupal is based on modules, PHP modules. And it seems to me these would be a perfect candidate to be ported over as Drupal modules as a way to get a lot of sites a lot more accessible quickly.
That makes sense to me. The way that ActiveC is designed is basically, even though it can be used as a standalone API, it can be incorporated into any framework or JavaScript library without conflict, because you can change the parent namespace for the entire thing. So you can incorporate it into YUI, jQuery, Next.js, Dojo, Prototype. It doesn't really matter what the language is or the framework. And then you can simply leverage that functionality within the confines of that environment.
Great. Thanks.
Any more questions from the audience?
Awesome.
So feel free to come up at the end and ask any other questions that you too shy to ask at the microphone. Bill Allison wanted to be here today to talk a little bit about our new initiative. I think he may have been a little tied up, so I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about what we're thinking of doing. We are currently designing what our new web accessibility initiative is going to look like, and our goal is education of you, the developers. So if you have any ideas of ways we can get good, full, rich educational experiences for you, please feel free to email me. My address is still lgreco, L-G-R-E-C-O, @berkeley.edu. We are going to have once-a-month meetings where people can come and express their difficulties and problems for other people, basically similar to the micronet, webnet model. We're going to just have troubleshooting meetings where people can come and talk to each other, try and work through issues. We're going to have clinics once a month as well where we review websites. And we're still really interested in how this initiative is going to work, so all your feedback is critical to us. One of the other things that we're really interested in is being sure that we have a community of accessibility on campus, that me and Sarah and Bill are not the only people that people are going to turn to for accessibility. So we're trying to set up a network of community leaders, and I'd like to recognize the people who are here today, who we've already identified as the beginning of that community, as my webnet or my web access members from the past. So Steve McConnell, Caroline Boyden, Devin Jones, Kathleen Liu. Who did I miss? Those are the only people who said hello to me. And you'll notice that the web access group has definitely reduced a lot in the past year due to retirement. We lost our founding member, Diane Walker, to retirement this year. And we lost Karen F. last year to retirement. So it's time to start rebuilding the community. We are looking for people to go out there and spread the word of accessibility. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. And we're going to try and do more than one of these a year in the future, because we realize that web access isn't only in June. Web access is universal. And once we're accessible, we're usable. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Bryan.
No problem. I'm glad I was able to.